Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whenever the fuck you're watching this. This is episode 20-something of the Rosinbaggers podcast, brought to you by Backyard Sports. I got the whole crew with me tonight. Ty, how you doing, buddy? Sorry we missed you last week. We had a little bit of complications with college football last week, but we are back. How you doing, man?
I am doing fantastic, and we'll just start off the show by saying so is Albert Pujols on cloud 9 after hitting 700 home runs, a feat that will never be reached again in Major League Baseball, in my personal opinion. The only unfortunate part about the 700 home run that Albert Pujols hit is I was literally on the other goddamn side of the universe, which is known in Nebraska as the Panhandle. It just doesn't exist. You don't go there unless you absolutely have to. And unfortunately, I had to for some high school football play-by-play duties. So actually missed the 700 home run, but then was watching all the highlights back, and just such a special moment in Major League Baseball, such a special moment for one of the all-time greats, a first ballot Hall of Famer, lockstep, lock it down. There's no question about it. He will be enshrined in Cooperstown following the conclusion of his remarkable career, but 700 home runs, and did it in style, hitting 2 in one game. The other side effect here, the damn game was on Apple TV.
Yeah.
And so you have Danny Mac and Jimmy Hayes and the St. Louis broadcast crew that's a part of the Valley Sports Midwest crew didn't get a call this special moment. In fact, they gave it to the streaming service Apple TV. You had no idea that stuff is going to happen when they started off this entire season. But what a great moment. And then on top of that, a few days later, the Cardinals clinch a playoff spot as they win the National League Central. So the Cardinals are in, and the playoff races are starting to take shape. We've still got a few races left to go. And another special note, for the first time this season, episode 20-something, my folks are watching. So welcome, everybody. I made it big time, as you can see. I'm on a podcast.
Yeah.
Look, Ma, I made it.
Look, Ma, I made it. Awesome. Yes. Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Larry, for watching.
Big Cardinals fan as well. Cardinals fan as well.
Stove, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, bud. Doing great. You know, last week of regular season baseball doesn't get better than this with the wild card races, man. Oh yeah, baby.
Oh yeah.
Divisions to be decided. Can't wait.
It's starting to feel like October baseball is in the air.
And I will say, congratulations, Ty, and for clinching. But also, I know you're a big Pujols fan as well. I was a big non-believer that he was not going to do it. So, you know, in a man of true fashion, you know, I will give credit where credit is due. So credit to Albert and the Cardinals. And, you know, honestly, I am happy that he did it with the Cardinals. I'm glad he signed the 1-year deal and came back and got it done as a Cardinals fan. So that's all I will say about that.
What I'm super excited about now, guys, is the fact that this is all behind him and we can focus on playoff baseball from an organizational standpoint, because every single damn question, every single game, is this 700 going to happen? When are you going to get 700? How are you going to feel when you get to 700? And it, quite frankly, the last couple of weeks has put loads and loads of pressure on him. I didn't feel like he was himself over the course of the last 2 weeks. He's finally got that monkey off the back. Now we can just focus on playoff baseball, and that's something that these three veterans with Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, and Albert Pujols know very well, and they're going to help those young guys out here in the postseason, and it could be something special brewing here for St. Louis come October.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's jump in. We'll review our games or series from last week. So I'll jump into mine real quick because it ended up being a lot less eventful than what I was going to pitch it as last week. So I was highlighting this series as one of the possible series that Pujols might get to 700. He ended up doing it in the next series against the Dodgers. The Cardinals did end up clinching a playoff spot later in the week, but they dropped 2-3 against the Padres in San Diego. The Padres look like they're starting to maybe play a little better baseball, and it's the right time of year for them to do so. Juan Soto seems to still be in a funk. I'm not really sure what's going on with him. I feel like maybe he's pressing, maybe he's trying to justify the price tag, maybe he's trying to justify the big trade. But the Padres take two out of 3 of this series, and Pujols doesn't do what what I was going to pitch it as last week. I had a 50-50 shot and I missed, which is usually how my luck goes. If you've ever been in a casino with me, that is exact. I could have 80% odds and probably still lose. So, this didn't end up being the series that he got the milestone with, but he did end up getting it last week, as Ty talked about just a moment ago. So I'll move on from that series. That was the main reason of highlighting that. Ty, you wanted to look at Phillies Braves last week. Talk to me a little bit about this series. We got wild card implications, potentially NL East implications with the Braves chasing the Mets. What'd you think of this series, man?
This was a big series, really, for both teams. And as you'll find out here on the episode, I've got a little bit of an NL wildcard theme slowly developing with the two teams that I really feel have a legitimate shot to potentially sneak into that third and final playoff spot in the National League wildcard. We're going to be previewing the Brewers coming up here in just a little bit. But this was all about really twofold. Like you mentioned, Gary, we had a NL wildcard implications with the Philadelphia Phillies trying to hold off the Milwaukee Brewers. You had the Atlanta Braves, who are in a dead heat, neck and neck. This is shades of a Secretariat going up against War Emblem in a horse race, if you will, down the stretch with these two powerhouses. And they're going to be two big teams to knock out in the National League playoff picture, I've got a feeling, because they're playing some pretty good baseball, and it was good baseball on display from the Atlanta Braves, but it didn't start that way. And you felt like Philadelphia in game one really sensed the urgency that was starting to emerge as they're playing now must-win games here down the stretch. And they win game one in absolute blowout fashion, 9-1. And I really felt like that was more of an indication of Philadelphia coming out with a must-win sort of attitude. And then you lock Atlanta with the New York Mets for game two, and it felt like Atlanta was turning it on a little bit, and then they were starting to feel the urgency. So it was two teams playing at an incredibly high level all series long, and it felt that way. It was a great watch. Braves end up flipping the script in game two. They win by the score of 6-3. Then we get the injury report on Strider, and that's just a huge blow for Atlanta down the stretch. And time will tell to see what they can do with that rotation to make do in the meantime. But at last check that I heard, maybe at least a couple weeks, 15 days minimum for Strider. That affects probably the first series of the playoffs. So Atlanta's going to have to make more with less, as they say. Sunday Fun Day was a blast. This game was back and forth. This game was high drama from the very first pitch all the way to the final out. And it would be bonus baseball, as this one would go extra innings all the way into 11. Atlanta finishing off the Philadelphia Phillies by the score of 8-7. Didn't do that much in terms of damage to Philadelphia in their wild card race, as Milwaukee continues to just tread water a little bit. And we'll talk more about the Brewers here in just a little bit, but it feels like they're just kind of running in mud right now and just maintaining 500 baseball. So Philadelphia doesn't drop out of that wild card picture, but it definitely closed the gap a little bit. And it will be interesting to see down the stretch here in this NL wildcard race. But for Atlanta to take 2 of 3 from a team like Philadelphia, who was hungry, who came in knowing they would have to play playoff baseball, that gave me a lot of positive indicators for Atlanta moving forward to potentially win this National League East race. This is going to be fun. The Braves and Mets down the stretch, and I know Stove's going to talk more about it on his preview, as well as he's got the Mets here in his preview. But it's going to be fun to watch here between these two teams down the stretch. That's all I can say. It's two teams playing at a very high caliber level. Philadelphia, Milwaukee will be interesting. Really kind of the National League in general with the NL East race, the NL Central race. There's the two main ones here in the last 6 games of the regular season that I certainly have my eye on.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the Strider injury, and that's a tough blow, because that's a guy that it's effortless for him to blow gas by people. Mm-hmm. And he's been the stud in that rotation, a good rotation. Max Fried is starting to come into form as well, so that's going to be good for the Braves as they go into the playoffs. But missing Spencer Strider, it's tough. And if they don't have him for the entire first round, that first round series that they're going to have, if they win the division, or if that's a guy you'd like to roll the ball out to in a one and done potential scenario in a wild card game, if that's where they end up, you're really looking at the possibility here that the Braves could be down maybe one of the top starters in the NL playoffs, and they're going to have somebody step up. The one benefit is that first round series is 5 games. You can kind of roll guys out there. You get the extra days of rest, etc. But that really is a blow for them. And then you got to think too, coming off the IL, is he going to be as sharp if they roll him out there for a second round, game? So looking ahead, it could be some cascading effect for them as they get into a tighter series in the NLCS. Obviously, you're going to be playing against stiffer competition. You have to assume possibly playing the Dodgers, right? In that NLCS, if that becomes the case. So it's not an easy kind of overlook it, but the Braves are going to be hurting Strider. And yeah, Ty, I'm kind of stumbling over myself because breaking news.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
I was wondering if anyone was going to say anything.
Yeah, number 99 has just hit number 61 as he makes his home run trot here live on the Yes Network. Aaron Judge
ahead, Homer.
Tied Roger Maris, and yeah, they just gave the lead back. I actually was going to make a Garrett Cole joke if I had the opportunity, but now Aaron Judge dominates the news here. Number 61 ties Roger Maris for the Yankees and American League home run records here, and the chase is on now for him to pass Maris and get that AL record. I'm going to talk about the BBWAA here in a minute, but he is chasing the AL home run record.
And let's leave it at that because I'm so sick and tired of it.
But Aaron Judge has tied Roger Maris with number 61. It felt like an inevitability, and almost like the Pujols 700. It's dominated the news cycle, and maybe he's felt some pressure to try to press to get it, and hasn't gotten a whole lot of pitches to hit lately as pitchers finally start pitching around him. It was so weird that they were still pitching to him for the longest time. But
all the way through the season, you just felt crazy. Like, when are you going to walk the guy?
Nobody else in this roster is hitting. All right. So we've got that news. Stove, Astros, Orioles. You kind of felt like this was one that the Orioles had to get.
Yeah. And it started off great.
Yeah.
Started off great.
Yeah.
4-game series, Thursday night victory, Friday night victory. You're like, hell yeah, baby.
Yep.
Let's go. Let's go. Then Saturday came, extra inning loss. And then Sunday came, loss. And you're right back where you were when you started the series. I think there's still 5 games back now.
It's down to 3.5. Seattle has done everything they can to try to give away that wild card spot.
Good. 3.5. And I still have hope. Boys. Still have hope for them. If they don't get it, what a hell of a season by the Orioles. You guys were high on them to begin with. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. I wasn't to begin with. But, man, they're fun to watch. It kind of reminds me of the Cubs back in 2015, 2016 with all the young players that they brought up and everything else like that. So they're fun to watch. I really wish instead of splitting the series, they could have taken 3 out of 4, if not swept them. Obviously, I want anyone to sweep the Astros. But it just wasn't in the cards. But there's still a fighting chance, and that's all you need in baseball. Yep. You just need a fighting chance. So, man, bats were alive, though, in this whole series. There were some runs scored, especially Friday, Saturday, I think Sunday's game as well, too. Close to 20 runs a game in a couple of those games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they ended up with over 50 runs in the series, right? It was like 51 or 52 runs in the whole series, 4-game series. Crazy.
You felt like that series, if Baltimore could have played at this time, anybody but Houston at this time, because Seattle's backpedaling and they're backpedaling hard, and they opened the door wide open for Baltimore to take advantage in this past series against the Houston Astros. But Houston is playing such good baseball. They go over 100 wins within the series, and 7-3 in their last 10. But you go back to Baltimore, and it was so hard this season to cheer against the O's. This was a team that you could easily get behind because you like to see the little guys. Everybody loves the underdog story. Y'all love the Cinderellas in NCAA March Madness. We're cheering for the 13s and the 12s and the 14s to knock off the big boys, and that's what Baltimore was, a team that had a 0% chance by all the media baseball writing pundits to begin the season to be even close. They call up Adley Rutschman. They get a little confidence in the clubhouse. Their bats have been alive all year. Their pitching has been decent. Their pitching has been solid enough to get them into this particular position. And you match up and throughout the course of a regular season, and especially in the American League, when you have teams like the Angels and the Rangers and the Royals and the Tigers, God dang it, give me one of those for Baltimore to close out the season and give us a little silver lining, give us a little hope. But Baltimore's got a lot of wood to chop here, and a handful of games remaining, 3.5 back. Clock is ticking fast on Baltimore.
Yeah, and they're struggling with Boston tonight, so it's gonna take something I think monumental from Seattle collapsing and Baltimore sweeping the remainder of the season against decent quality ball clubs. They like you said, they don't have a favorable schedule down the stretch, and you have to kind of feel like Stove said, right? Through 2 games of that Houston series, you're like, holy shit, this might happen. And if they were able to sweep that, we're looking at a game and a half, maybe even tighter than that. If Seattle starts to feel the pressure even more and Baltimore maybe seizes some momentum and continues to win games here. But, it felt like an opportunity lost when you take the first 2 games of that series and then end up splitting a 4-game series, especially with the competition you've got left down the stretch here.
Hey, hold up real quick, guys. Hold up. Not sports related.
Uh-oh.
But Coolio.
Yes.
Gangster's Paradise.
He's off to the Gangster's Paradise in the sky.
Man.
Yeah. Coolio. Another celebrity down.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into our preview of series coming up this week. The big ones. October's on the horizon. For me, I'm looking at Phillies Braves. Coming up this week. This is obviously NL East matchup here. This is no. I think we got this one mixed up. Ty reviewed Phillies Braves. I have Tampa Houston, and the reason being for Tampa Houston.
You didn't send me that.
I probably sent you the wrong thing then.
You did.
That's on me. Tampa Houston. I want to preview Tampa versus Houston because this is potentially. There it is. This is
the graphic.
There's the overlay. So this is a potential first-round matchup, right? If Tampa's able to get through the wild card gauntlet that is, the American League wild card with Tampa, Toronto, probably Seattle, maybe Baltimore if they can find the magic to get past Seattle in the standings. If Tampa gets past that wild card gauntlet, they will face Houston in the first round of the playoff, the first full series of the playoffs. And they've got an opportunity this week. Yeah, go Braves, right? We want to see we're going to talk about that Braves-Mets matchup here in a moment. But Tampa versus Houston, and this is going to be, for me, I think, a little bit of a litmus test for a team that I think with Tampa, their roster really is built for the playoffs. They have so many arms, so many power arms, guys in the lineup that have extended at bats. They put a lot of pressure on the defense, putting the ball in play, a lot of speed. Wander Franco's healthy again. We're looking at a team that I think is built for a playoff run, and this weekend against Houston is going to be a nice little litmus test for them to see where they're at, get a little bit of competition leading into the playoffs, and potentially like I said, a preview of that possibly first round matchup, which would be, in my opinion, would be a great matchup for that reason, because I think Houston and Tampa, the way you stack those rosters up, the rotation, the bullpen, and the lineups for both these teams match up pretty well. I think we could see a 5-game series in that, that Houston versus Tampa matchup if it does come to fruition. And I love the way Tampa, it doesn't, as far back as, Joe Madden in his early days in Tampa when he was winning a ton of games, and they get to the World Series, and they get, they just use their arms in unique ways, and they continue to do it now. It's almost like it's just a cultural thing in that organization. It's always fun to watch those matchups, how they roll arms out of the bullpen early in games, not afraid to do that because they've got a lot of arms, a lot of live arms, power pitchers. And against a Houston team that's scoring a ton of runs this year, pitching pretty well themselves, but they've got a lineup that's really quite potent. They're fourth in the league, I think, in runs scored, maybe fifth in runs scored. So they're right at the top of the major leagues in terms of runs scored against the Tampa team that can roll out a ton of guys that just throw gas. The 100, 101, 102 from a ton of guys in that rotation. So this for me is the reason I took this series, because we might be seeing a preview of what we'll see in October.
Yeah, it certainly has all the ingredients for a juicy playoff series should that come around. And again, it's two teams right now that are playing really good baseball. I already mentioned, how good Houston has been playing, and then you take a look at Tampa, and yeah, they're a 500 team, but they are certainly a team you just don't want to play down the stretch. And should that come to fruition, and we see those teams in the postseason, I think that's a sexy postseason matchup that goes the distance, that has all the ingredients in it, that has some of those chess matches that get played out to when do you bring a starting pitcher back on a short day's rest and come in there. So, yeah, should be a good series for sure with the Rays and the Stros.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'll grab the overlay here. Stove had to step away for just a moment, but let's look at your preview. You're looking at Brewers, Marlins. We might have the NL Cy Young winner pitching in this series. What do you think here, buddy?
Pitching in game 1 of the series. The best pitcher in baseball on the worst team. Maybe Shohei makes an argument for that in the American League, but for certain, my vote, if I had one as a baseball writer, which I don't because I'm not actually an official baseball writer, would be Sandy Alcantara for the Miami Marlins. He has had a fantastic start to the 2022 campaign, really continued that despite the fact that the Marlins continue to sputter offensively. They're just anemic. They have no offense whatsoever to work with. Yes, you point back to the 60-day disabled list, season-ending injury to Jazz Chisholm. Oh, what could have been with the electric nature that he provided in that batting lineup. But other than that, this team is just flat AF. That being said, I'm wearing all my Marlins. I'm finding Marlins, man, somewhere in the crowd. I'm asking them for a couple shirts. I'm asking them for a couple jerseys. I'm rooting for a Marlins sweep here because the schedule, as it all turns out and gets thrown out in the wash here, favors Milwaukee heavily.
Yeah.
And I'm not scared of the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah,
I'm not scared of the Brewers in the postseason. I just passionately hate Milwaukee. And especially after their gaffe at the trade deadline to throw Hader, which really sank the ship for them, in my personal opinion. Yep. And they really haven't recovered ever since. They've just been sputtering. They've just been treading water, just doggy paddling their way through this Major League Baseball season. But you take a look at the schedule. Yeah, the Brewers are playing the Cardinals right now to wrap up that short 2-game series. Then they turn around and they got the Marlins. Then they turn around and they got the Diamondbacks. And oh, by the way, both are at American Family Field. It's a home series, 6-game homestand for the Milwaukee Brewers. So all the chips are in their corner so to speak, here as they're sitting 1.5 games back in the National League wildcard race to the Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies have the Cubs here to put together their remaining schedule. Then they have a 4-gamer with the Nats, including a Saturday doubleheader. And then they finish with the Houston Astros. And it's, of course, the big Houston Astros that scares you at the end of the season. Will Houston be the slay yet another potential playoff contender? We'll have to wait and see. But like I said, I'm pulling hard for the Phillies. I'm pulling hard for the Marlins here from the NL East to knock out the Milwaukee Brewers once and for all. Hate seeing NL Central teams, no offense, Stove, make the postseason unless you're the St. Louis Cardinals. And I've always hated Milwaukee. But we got the good matchup coming up on Friday night. Sandy Alcantara going to be going up. The Battle of the Aces should be a low-scoring ball game. I look for the Marlins to potentially take game 1 in that series, and then it's really a toss-up from there because there's just not enough in the cupboard. There's not enough in the kitchen for Miami to really work with. And can the Brewers, for once this season, they've had multiple opportunities to seize control of scenarios, to gain some ground, and they have not cashed in. When the chips and the deck is in their favor, Milwaukee continues to fumble things away. And so I'm just curious to see if we're going to see a potential playoff contender Milwaukee Brewers, or if we'll see the same Milwaukee Brewers that we have seen throughout the course of 155 games so far this year. Time will tell. And again, in that tight race, 1.5 back here from the Philadelphia Phillies as we enter into tonight's competition. Phillies playing the Cubs, Brewers playing the Cardinals. The series coming up on Friday with the Brew Crew and the Miami Marlins. Again, wouldn't be surprised the way this season has gone for Milwaukee that they just end the misery, that Miami comes and sinks the ship, that the Marlins out of nowhere come out and attack the Milwaukee Brewers and put the kibosh, the final blow to their postseason hopes and get the Phillies in there. And what a sexy National League playoffs that would be with the Dodgers, the Braves, the Cardinals, the Mets, the Padres, and the Phillies. I'm all over it. You've put the Brewers in place of the Phillies in that National League playoff rate, in that National League playoff picture, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, ugh, okay. Talk to me in round 2. Let's go, Philly. Let's go, Marlins. I'm calling it right now. Marlins take 2 from the Milwaukee Brewers, and Milwaukee is not able to recover somehow, some way. The Diamondbacks find a way to put the final blow in the Brewers season to close things out. So should be a fun series to watch. It's one of those scenarios, guys, and I say this a lot as a Cardinals fan. I'm a Cardinals fan first, and then typically I'm a fan of whoever's playing the Chicago Cubs. So far down the ladder this season that I'm a Cardinals fan first, and right now it's whoever's playing the Milwaukee Brewers, and in that case it's the Miami Marlins. So let's go Flash.
Oh, what? You muted. Oh,
You don't stand for that shit around here, bud.
Stove threw the band hammer out there.
There's a little connection. The 93 season with Edgar Renteria. He
He's
eventually
still going.
became a St. Louis Cardinal. There's love there with the Marlins. They're like my second favorite team, especially this weekend because they're playing the Brewers.
I like it. I like it.
The Miami hat, by the way.
Good talk.
Yeah, just some things to think about with Sandy Alcantara. And I know that like Julio Urias is kind of in the running for the Cy Young. He's got 17 wins and he's got a better ERA than Alcantara. But one, the teams that they play on, very different. Alcantara's got 5 complete games this year, 1 complete game shutout, 220 innings, 60 more innings essentially than Urias by the time he makes his start this weekend. About 50 more strikeouts. He's about to hit 200, one of a handful of pitchers this year that'll hit 200 strikeouts. So I'm with you, Ty, that I think that it is Alcantara and everybody else when it comes to the Cy Young race. But I do, I see a couple of names that might be sneaky, and the baseball writers, I never have confidence that they're going to get it right. So,
and so often, other than, Countful handful of times. Greinke comes to mind when he was pitching for Kansas City on an absolute dog shit team. So many times it becomes sort of like the MVP award, right?
Yep.
And they give out the award to the player on the better team. And in this case, it's certainly not Miami. Again, for the sake of it, you want a guy that gets the ball, that goes 8 minimum, that throws strikeouts, that has a low ERA that you don't want to face. And I just look at the amount of games Miami won with Sandy pitching and the amount of opportunities that he gave Miami to be in ball games versus where this team would be at if he wasn't in that starting rotation. This team's at the bottom of the National League. They're below Washington in my book without Alcantara as the starting pitcher. No offense, Gary.
That's a bold statement.
They've been brutal.
That's pretty fucking bad.
They've been bad. Miami would be worse if Sandy Alcantara wasn't pitching for him.
That's fair. That's not good company to keep either. All right, let's jump over to Stove Series. This one's really juicy as well. Mets Braves. This series does have the potential with where the standings sit right now. If one team or the other sweeps this series, that could decide and clinch the NL East. But you have to think with the Braves finishing their season, I forget. They both finish against teams that they should win the series against, though. So you have to think if the Braves or the Mets take 2 of 3, whichever one takes 2 of 3 from this series has the leg up with only 3 games to play at the end of the season. Stove, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, right now, both teams are tied. Mets are losing. Braves are tied. And they flip-flop teams for who they're playing next week. Nationals will play the Mets, and the Marlins will play the Braves after their series this weekend. Honestly, this series is going to come down to pitching. And we touched base on it earlier with Strider being out, because you're going to get Scherzer on Sunday night for the Mets. You get DeGrom on Saturday. And we all know, with DeGrom, 2 runs might win the game for you if you're Braves, because whenever DeGrom pitches,
the Mets can't score.
Yeah. So it honestly, it's going to come down to pitching in this series, I think. And it's going to be a good one. I honestly think that the Braves are going to take 2, if not sweep them. I really do. We touched on it probably about a month or 2 ago on, how the Braves and Mets, how they were basically aligned the same way they were last year. And then we saw what happened last year with the Mets and the Braves. We saw that roller coaster of a ride. Yeah. But one thing that we did say for this year with the Mets that they had going for them was Scherzer being on the team and kind of holding them accountable, holding that pitching staff accountable. And there's been times where the Mets, will kind of start going on that little downward tumble, but they don't go like it's not a straight 90.
They're not nosediving.
Yeah, they're not nosediving. It's a slow, and then they kind of bounce back up and everything. So you haven't seen that big of a drop from the Mets this year, and you also haven't seen that big of a rise with the Braves either. So they've kind of been even the second part of the season. I still believe the Braves are going to win the East, and the Mets will be a wild card. But again, this series this weekend is going to come down to pitching. And we know these games are going to be tight, but it's the games leading up to this series and then the final games too that are almost the ones you need to watch out for, because those are the ones that people take for granted and look past. And so, the Mets, they're down 4-2, I think, in the eighth, bottom of the eighth, maybe. And the Braves were tied 2-2. So if the Braves can get one here, if they can take one, they have a game lead going into tomorrow. And then, who knows what that does to the Mets. Maybe they start pressing in this series. This is a perfect opportunity for one of these teams to really take advantage and get that lead. That way, maybe you could rest a starter on Monday or Tuesday of next week, if need be.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm with you. I think the Braves do end up winning this division. I think the advantage they're going to have is the fact that the series is in Atlanta too.
Bingo.
Yeah, so I think the fortunate nature of the schedule.
I would love to be there this week.
Oh my God, it's going to be fucking electric.
Yeah,
I think Atlanta is a shorter drive for me than where I was last Friday when I hit the 700 home run.
And you were in the same state.
The damn state. Atlanta's rocking. It's one of the most difficult places to play. Their fan base is absolutely insane, and that place just gets incredibly loud. I will tell you this, and you're dead on, Gary. Home field advantage comes to play. If this is in New York, if this is a Mets home series, and you've got the place rocking in a late ball game, I don't think Atlanta wins close games late in New York just because of the atmosphere that they have created over there at Citi Field, especially with the closer and everything that's going on there with New York and all that fun stuff that we saw earlier this season. I think this comes down straight up to home field advantage, and I see this being 2 or 3, and ultimately, when it's all said and done, Atlanta, I think, can take care of the Marlins in that 3-game series to close out the regular season. So I'm with you guys. If I'm a betting man, which I am, I've got the Braves winning the National League East down the stretch.
Hey, one thing to consider too. I know we just touched on home field advantage. Okay, Hurricane Ian is going to be kind of somewhat in the area on Friday and Saturday.
That's a good perspective.
So be prepared for some wet baseballs. It's going
to I hear that the MLB is actually contemplating making a doubleheader out of this series, either Saturday or Sunday, depending on the weather as well, which I think usually when you get 2 good teams that play each other in doubleheaders, they'll split. So that could have a little bit of a factor in kind of where the standings are too. They haven't made a decision yet, but they are floating the idea out there of if the rain, the weather with Hurricane Ian, that they might make a doubleheader in the middle of this series. So we'll see how that plays out. I have a question to pose to both of you. If you're the Dodgers, which of these 2 teams are you rooting for this weekend to win the NL East, assuming that you'll probably face the other one in that first round series? Stove, let's go to you first.
Honestly, you're rooting for the Braves, in my opinion. Now, I know Strider's out, okay? I think the Braves have more offensive power than the Mets. And so that's why I think that if I were the Dodgers, I'd be rooting for the Braves.
Ty?
I'm going to go the opposite, and I'm going to go the opposite based on pitching matchups. I think that the Dodgers would, especially with that offense, like to see a Striderless Atlanta Braves squad. I don't think they want all the tools in the arsenal that the New York Mets have to offer in terms of their pitching rotation, especially like we were talking about. A lot of times you see in these playoff races, you get guys going on short rest. So not only do you have to face them once in a series, you're going to have to turn around and face them at some point in the very near future. Pitching on pitching, New York has the advantage over Atlanta right now, and I think that they feel like, from the Dodgers' perspective, that their offense can keep strides with anybody. And I don't think the Mets have enough firepower in their offense to keep pace with the Dodgers if pitching is equal. I'm saying that they're going to be they'll be big Mets fans coming up here in this series.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a wrench in the whole thing because I can cheat like that. If I'm the Dodgers, if I'm the Dodgers, I'm rooting for the Padres in all the wild card games, and I don't care who wins this series. But if I know that I'm going to face one of these two teams, I think I want to face the Mets because I know that the Braves have the pedigree in the playoffs. So I think I'm rooting for the Braves in this if I'm the Dodgers because, one, they beat us last year in the playoffs in the NLCS. Two, the Mets are a team that, I just don't know that they've got the pedigree for October outside of Scherzer, and who knows what goes on behind him. Although counterintuitively, maybe I'm rooting for the Mets because I want them to win opposite me going into the NLCS, maybe. But I don't know that the Dodgers want to face the Braves in that 5-game series. The pedigree is just, to me, the October pedigree. I don't want to see them especially in a short series. So, but hands down, I'm rooting for the Padres in the wild card games because they are our fucking little brother. We have been beating the shit out of them all year. So,
P.S. It doesn't matter who the Dodgers want, who the Dodgers get, what's going to happen with the Los Angeles Dodgers, because when this dust all settles, these guys right here are winning this little trophy right here. They might win this very little trophy. Like, I'll give it to them if they really want it. I mean, I made it on a 3D printer, so it's free. But I hope they win something that's slightly bigger.
What a magical story that would be. The trio to go out like that. Pujols hits 700. They go on to win a World Series. Be a hell of a story for sure. I don't know. In reality, the firepower doesn't line up.
Rosinbaggers, like, can we all just three have 30 for 30 rights on it?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Make $1 million and just retire off into the sunset.
Hey, I'll be good with that. I made money off the Cardinals. Awesome.
All right, let's transition into our salute to service before we get to State of the Union. All right, this week's episode goes out to Sergeant First Class Jeremy W. Griffin, who died September 16th, 2019, serving during Operation Freedom Sentinel. Sergeant Griffin, at the time of his death, was 40. He hailed from Greenbrier, Tennessee. He was killed by small arms fire when his unit was engaged in combat operations in Wardak Province, Afghanistan. He was assigned to 3rd Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group Airborne, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington. He was posthumously awarded the Bronze Star Medal and Purple Hearts. Sergeant First Class Griffin, this episode goes out to you. We have the watch. All right, let's finish up with State of the Union. All right, I'm going to save mine for last because I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. So I believe Ty and Stove, you guys are kind of in lockstep on this. So I'm going to go to Stove first. The floor is yours, buddy.
I think Ty and I are going to be pretty much in sync on all three of these here. First two, okay. The third one, the shift restriction. Ty, I'm gonna have to apologize to your family for.
I pre-warned him that there's going to be foul language here on this show, and it's absolutely nothing that that they haven't said before or heard me say out loud when watching Husker games. So the floor is yours. F-bomb away, my friend.
Okay. The shift restriction. Are you fucking kidding me? This is asinine. You are banning a shift. If you don't like the shift, learn how to hit the opposite direction. Learn how to put down a damn bunt. This is ridiculous that MLB is allowing this to happen and ban the shift. I have no words for it. And if I'm Joe Madden, as a coach, I'm doing the shift anyway. Fuck it. What are they going to do? What are they going to do to you?
What is the penalty?
What is it?
What is the penalty for shifting? That's a great question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like a $10,000 fine?
Know.
Okay.
They don't know. You want to know why, Ty? You want to know why? Because Manfred's a freaking idiot. And hey, Ty, that little thing that you have there in front of you, with that little thing right there,
this piece of metal,
bud. It's just a piece of metal. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Fucking Manfred. Ty, back him up here.
Sorry,
well,
Ty, Stanley.
Meatloaf once famously wrote a song that 2 out of 3 ain't bad. In this case, 2 out of 3 is goddamn horrible with the shift restrictions that have come into play here for the 2023 season. And I was arguing about this the other day, and I posted it up on Facebook, and there was one person that came out in defense of the banning of the shift. One person. Sorry to say he's a Cardinals fan, but he says that this is the way that baseball, this is what baseball wants. This is what they need. And I'm over here thinking that, again, what you're saying, lay down a bunt, hit oppo, learn to hit oppo. We're making, from my standpoint, I was a youth coach all the way through high school. And I've coached every level from 8-year-olds to 10-year-olds to 13 to 18-year-old kids. Ultimately, what this does is make an entire generation of really shitty hitters that are swinging for the fences, putting as much power on the bat as possible, and not learning how to read the defense, not learning how to hit. I cannot fathom any potential good outcome that banning the shift has for the game. You make rule changes for the good of the game. And this, in my opinion, and in a lot of baseball fans' opinion, has nothing to do with watchability of the sport. It has nothing to do with making your product better. It has everything to do with the fact that, and as Dad says, it's all about exit velo and launch angle, and we've talked about it. We've talked about it ad nauseum here on the podcast with these hitters and in the StatCast era. But this doesn't make your product better. And if you're a commissioner and an owner and an invested fan, you have to speak up on this. This cannot be a rule that goes past the 2023 season, in my opinion. And again, from the defensive strategy standpoint, your hands are just tied. And now we're going to have slow pitch softball games breaking out in Major League Baseball. It's going to, you want to shorten the game up? That's your in-game goal. You want to shorten the game up? Well, now we're going to have 14 to 17 games that are just marathons that go 5.5 hours. I pity what happens when the Yankees and some of the other American League powerhouses with the big, Yankees, Blue Jays, the games are going to go 6 hours. With the offensive numbers that they're putting up if you ban the shift. It's a horrible concept. And quite frankly, I really don't like the other two rules. I don't care. I don't care about them. The pitch timer, okay, whatever, fine. Again, how you penalize it is going to be a big factor. the extra wideness on the bases, again, okay. These they're very meh rules for me. And then you throw the banning of the shift, and it boggles my mind when they've been talking about banning the shift since the beginning of this season, since way back in spring training when we were going over and hashing everything out and making sure we had a season. It was being preliminarily discussed, and discussed is what ultimately has come out of this entire thing. I haven't seen one positive fan comment. When you check out Facebook, you have not seen one positive comment from a baseball fan about banning the shift. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see strategy get thrown by the wayside. Again, yes, you're saving some time with the pitch clock. Average games in minor league baseball, averaging 26 minutes shaved off. Okay, shaving off 26 minutes from a 3.5-hour game is still a 3-hour game. You want a shorter sport, go watch soccer. They've got 90 minutes and the clock is done. To me, if baseball loses fans because of banning the shift, which ultimately it could because it's not the same game we grew up with, Manfred is digging his own grave and needs to sleep in it. I haven't liked him since the very beginning of the season, and I'm liking him less and less every single day that he is the commissioner of baseball. It is pathetic. Rob Manfred, man clown, as I call him, needs to be removed from the game at the nearest and most available opportunity. And I don't even know how you go about that. Commissioners or owners get together and discuss things. Again, there's a few players that are going to be like, well, this will prolong my career hitting. Well, of course it will, because you don't have to focus on the key fundamentals. You don't have to focus on the defense. You can just get up there and swing your big bat, boy. But I don't want to see that. I want to see the 1-2 duels that go late into the games, entertaining baseball. This is ruining the game for me. And again, I'll just go back to my standpoint. And a lot of people say this is me being old and saying, get off my lawn, and I don't want new rule changes to come into play. But if I can teach an 8-year-old kid how to hit an opposite field, I'm pretty sure as a Major League Baseball multi-million-dollar athlete, you could probably fucking figure it out. And baseball needs to figure this out. If this goes beyond 2023, it might lose one of its biggest fans. It might be me.
Yeah, this one's tough. And I'm with you guys on the first two. Like, sure, whatever, right? Pitch timer. I was never a guy who took any time on the mound. I got on the mound. I got the sign. I pitched. I barely ever even threw over it. Runners, just didn't give a fuck about guys that got on base. It's me and the batter. I get the batter out, the runner can't score. That's my stance on it. Get on the mound, toe the rubber, throw the fucking ball. I know some guys have rituals and some guys go through this and that, but I never cared too much about it. So pitch timer to me, so be it. The bigger bases, if it really is about safety, fine. If it encourages a little bit more with base stealing because you're stealing about 4 inches or 6 inches, fine. I don't give a shit. They're, as Ty put it, they're meh rules for me. I'm good with them. If there's a purpose for them, if we get 26 minutes shaved off of games, fine. But you're talking about shaving 26 minutes off of a game that now you're going to add an hour to because nobody can get anybody out because everybody's just pulling the ball between the first and second baseman because you've created an electronic football fucking board of guys that are just set up on the field and, the ball went between two players and they couldn't do anything about it. Fuck all of that. Fuck all of that. If you can't hit the ball the other way, you shouldn't be on a major league fucking roster. That's my stance. Get the fuck miss me with this shit. The banning of the shift, no chance. No chance. I hate the shift, but I also understand the shift, and I hate banning the shift even more. I hate the shift because it's so effective, and I've seen the game of Major League Baseball fucking devolve into this weird home run derby, all or nothing, analytics-driven fucking sport, and I hate it. And the shift, to me, is the absolute number one indicator of that in the game. Because if you can just put everybody on one side of the field and still be effective defensively, that tells me that hitting is fucking dead in the game of baseball. So I'm with you guys 100%. banning the shift. Terrible decision. If it survives past 2023, it's going to be really hard to watch a game where you know that these guys are just fuck. They're just up there swinging as hard as they can. The moment I realized that like this shit has pervaded to levels it shouldn't have, I was coaching Little League last year, and a kid asked me how his launch angle was, and I said, "Kid, you missed the ball 6 times on 7 pitches. I don't care about your launch angle. Hit the ball. Figure that out first." All right. I'm a little worked up, but I'm about to get a little more worked up because the
Here we go.
What's that?
I said, here we go.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this one.
The Baseball Writers Association of America. I have a long-standing disdain for these fucking wastes of journalist credentials, these fucking ass clowns that decide they're going to write things in the moment that they think is fucking gospel. These dickheads who had their jobs saved in the summer of 98, who were all for it when Sammy and Mark were chasing Roger. And then after that, you had Sammy and Mark jostling for who was going to finish the season with the most home runs. And then here comes Barry Bonds, and all they want to write about is how great of a hitter he is. He gets one pitch a series to hit, and he dunks it in McCovey Cove. These are the stories that were written during this time. And then suddenly we get this fucking preposterous report, and they decide they're going to pick and choose and cherry pick what they're going to take from this report, and then they're going to shit on guys like Bonds and McGuire and Sosa, who saved the game of baseball. A dying fucking league in the mid-90s was saved in the summer of 98, and you have the audacity to not vote them into the Hall of Fame. Oh, they tainted the game. The fuck they did. Your fucking league was endorsing it and promoting it. Chicks dig the long ball was the slogan of the late 90s and early 2000s. Your league promoted it, turned a blind eye to it. It was going on in the 80s. It was going on in the 70s. Mantle and Maris were taking greenies during their chase of Babe Ruth. Guys before them were using amphetamines. It's fucking nonsense that we decide we're going to play this holier-than-thou card with Bonds and McGuire and Sosa. Clemens can kiss my ass for the way he handled it, but he's a Hall of Famer. Kurt Schilling, because he's a mean person in the media and has weird takes on politics, we're going to keep him out. Mariano Rivera was not a fucking unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer. Kiss my ass with that shit. Ken Griffey Jr., Mickey Mantle, those guys were fucking unanimous Hall of Famers, and you didn't vote them in unanimously. Mariano Rivera, the closer, no chance should he have been the first one, but he played in New York, and he was a nice guy. Derek Jeter, first ballot, all but one vote. He was a nice guy in the media. Fuck the Baseball Writers Association of America. Your morals are fucking lost. And I can't stand this idea that Aaron Judge is somehow chasing the real home run record. That's the icing on the cake for me. He is chasing the American League record. He is chasing the New York Yankees record. But the single season Major League Baseball record is 73. And that's how it stands. You do not get to decide after the fact when you're trying to pander to some fucking base of fans that Barry Bonds didn't exist, that Mark McGuire didn't exist, that Sammy Sosa didn't exist. We ain't playing that fucking game. Baseball Writers Association of America, you should all have your creds pulled. Period. On that note, Stove. Closing thoughts, bud.
I have no thoughts after that, buddy. You're good.
Ty, how about you, buddy?
Well, now that we have just shit all over the game that we love so dear, talking about a potential losing a fan because banning the shift, and talking about these baseball writers, which we have glorified throughout the years, having their credentials pulled, I am going to go back to, we have a handful of games left here in the regular season. When we come back next on the podcast, it'll be the last night of the regular season. We will be getting set for postseason play. By then, everything should be decided. We'll be able to start making some postseason predictions and have a really good, fun rest of the ride as we move on into early November. By the time this dust all settles here for postseason baseball, I'm looking forward to the postseason edition of the Rosinbaggers podcast. I think that there's going to be playoff predictions aplenty. We're going to disagree wholeheartedly, as we often do here on the show, and we'll probably even curse one or two teams down the road, as we so often do here on the Rosinbaggers pod. The postseason is the most exciting time. It brings the typical fans into the game, and they're like, well, who are these guys that have been playing such great baseball all year long? And all of a sudden they start to pay attention, they start to care. Baseball slowly becomes a talking point at the water cooler once again as you move along throughout the postseason. So excited to get things underway. We're clenched, baby. We're in, and I'm going to close with one more thought. How about the damn job of Ollie Marmol this year as the St. Louis Cardinals manager? He came in for Mike Schilt, who was let go after last season with the St. Louis Cardinals. There was a lot of question marks whether or not that was even a justified dismissal. They brought in this guy who is younger than three of the players that are currently playing on the St. Louis Cardinals, and everyone said, how is he going to be able to gel this clubhouse? Well, then they add Albert Pujols to the lineup, and that really just started to fix things for St. Louis. And not only is Albert Pujols got number 700, he's also been a producer for St. Louis. So he's not just going out there and getting ceremonious swings. He's actually producing here for these Cardinals. I couldn't be more proud to be a Cardinals fan. I couldn't be more excited of what Ollie has been able to do. I hope he gets extended for a long, long period of time, because he's got that clubhouse believing in themselves. He's got that clubhouse having fun, and now they're going to be playing postseason baseball once again. They've clinched, I believe, for the first time since 2019, the National League Central. Couldn't be more excited for what lies ahead, and I think it could be, as we mentioned, the storybook, Cinderella, 700, cap it off with a little piece of metal at the end of it for St. Louis. What a historic season that would be.
For sure. Hey, you put it perfectly. Next week, man, we are talking playoff fucking baseball. October is here. This is what we've been building up to all season, talking about how awesome October is. We get to talk about it starting next week. For Big Stove and Ty, I'm Gary. This has been an eventful episode. We are out.